Om mano na buddhi, na shariram, na indriyam, na tanmatram, na bhutani, na bhuta panchakam. Aham kritaschapi vyatsvarupakam, tamesham atmanam, upviti shashvitam. Om shantihi, shantihi, shantihi. That one attains to the Supreme Brahman, who dissolves mind, intellect, objects, body, senses, and the subtle elements and gross elements, along with the ego, into the Atman, the indivisible self in all beings. Om peace, peace, peace. Om Shravanayapi Buhubir Yo Nalabhyaha Shrinvato Pi Bahavo Yam Navidyuhu Ascharyo Gyata Kushalo Shalabdaha Ascharyo Vakta Kushalo Nushishtaha. Om Shantihi, Shantihi, Shantihi. Many there are who have never heard of the Atman, the great self within. Many others, though they hear of it, fail to comprehend it. Fortunate is that one who hears of it. Wonderful is the one who speaks of it. But extremely blessed is that one who, having heard of it from the lips of an illumined preceptor, is able to realize it here and now, in this very life. Om peace, peace, peace. Om Satyena, Om Satyena labhyastapasa hyesa atma samyagyanena brahmacharyena nityam antaha sharirehi jyotirmayo hi shubraha yam pashanti atayaha kshinadoshaha. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. The Atman, the indivisible self in all living beings, in all things, is realized by knowledge, by moderation, by austerity, and by veracity. All of these constantly cultivated. When mental impurities dissolve due to this ongoing practice, then the seer beholds it naturally, existing everywhere and in everything, even here in this very world and body. Om peace, peace, peace. May peace be unto us, and may peace be unto all. Om Hari Om. So we are very pleased to gather here in Portland to speak about these esoteric subjects, which we hope to make exoteric. We hope to bring them full broadcast into everyone's homes, because that's what householders need to do in this lifetime. We look around the world, we see there are plenty of monastic communities, maybe not in America so much anymore, but where thousands of beings are gathered in one-pointed concentration with thoughts on reality alone, as the Upanishad, which we'll be studying today, states. So for the householders then, in this day and age, we need to bring those teachings called dharma, or we were talking so much about the Atman in these early slokas. Atmagyan is a word that Lord Vashishta in the earliest times loved very much. The knowledge of the self, with a capital S, that is. Knowledge of the ego has, I think, been had enough by people, in all its dances and all its caricatures and all its foolishness. And in the case of a ripe ego, all its beauty, and like with Sri Ramakrishna Paramahamsa and others who told us, apakvahamkara, make the ego ripe, and then it won't be a rascal and it won't get in the way. But if it's unripe, pakvahamkara and pakvahamkara were the terms. Ahamkara means ego, of course, as opposed or contrasted to Atman. Then it gets in the way, it obscures everything naturally beautiful about life. You might say there's a kind of natural beauty. We've been calling it in our recent retreat, Tripura Sundari. Sundari means beautiful. It's her triple city, Tripura. And so there's three worlds out here, Bur, Bhuva, Swaha. We know about that, the realm of the humans and the realm of the intermediary realms, you might call it the elementals, and then the realm of the ancestors generally. And that's a recurring cycles of rebirth in those are one of the main subjects on the minds of teachers who want to share this Dharma with you. But when you look at the three worlds, you might want to capitalize that in terms of Tripura Sundari. Then she's the owner of this triple city. The outer city would be different than Bur, with its external problems of destruction and death and decay and so forth. If you're that monk or if you're that dharmic householder, you give up residence in those three cities, and you try and take up residence in at least the first of the three cities of Tripura Sundari, the most beautiful one. And she's epitomized by the mantra. So when the teacher gives you the mantra, you get the first city right away, and you're right away going in the opposite direction of the world and worldly pursuits. You're on a different track entirely. And people won't probably see it or notice it unless they develop some affinity with it too, which you should try and allow them to do. You can't strew pearls before swine, but you can share the Dharma when the time is ready and right for people. Otherwise they will revolt and run the ego again will run the opposite way. It doesn't want to be revealed. It wants to stay hidden and master over everything that it surveys, you see. So that first city that you get when you get the mantra, one person got pre-initiation here, I'm happy to say, over the Sturga Puja period that we've just finished. And so is already getting a glimpse, as it were, of that eternal city, the outer city, which goes on by recitation of the mantra. Actually, you get shown the form. We're fortunate in this day and age because the form that we're shown is a living human form in the case of Sri Sharada Devi, my teacher's teacher, who Sri Ramakrishna said was the incarnation of the three main goddesses herself in this day and age. He proclaimed that about her. The Holy Mother, we call her. So when my teacher gave me her mantra, which I very much wanted, then he showed me her form, which I'd seen, of course, in a picture. And then you get the four-armed Kali and the 8-armed Durga, 10-armed, 16-armed, so forth. That's all the outer worship that you're starting into. It's really rather tantric because you're learning all of a sudden to deify things rather than either enjoy them or suffer from them. That's basically the distinction. You could say you've been enjoying the world, but you've also been suffering the karma of enjoying and suffering. You get this outer form of the mother, and then you start enjoying exquisitely, as Swami Vivekananda said, an unusual thing to say for a monk. But you don't have this mundane experience anymore that's going in rounds and bringing you suffering along with surface pleasure. But you're actually getting an exquisite pleasure out of it, and that has to do with the bliss of worship, outer worship. So you can't pull that carpet out from under people just because you're a non-dualist or something. You see, you're probably a dualist rather than a dualist until until you get that mantra from your teacher. So that's really what it's all about, especially in an age where, to quote the popular voice, we don't have time. You know, we don't have time. And the mantra being, why me, why me? So why do I suffering? But instead of asking why me, what do you ask? Who am I? Yeah. So that's going to be one of those gifts that comes along with your giving up residence in the world of five elements, although the five elements will take on their original beauty too once you attend upon this outer city. And then there was an inner city that when you meditate on the mantra for years and years, you get the repetition of the japa recitation gives you her inner vision. Now it's gone from outer to inner. So, and then that's called sukshma rupa, her subtle form. And then meditating further, you get transcendent of even that. And she shows you her true form, which is formless. Formless form, you might want to say, leading to Brahman, or the Almighty, the non-dual, the true non-dual. So all of this was looked at in our retreat recently on Tripura Sundari, which is another name for Divine Mother, and we just had Durga Puja of 9 days and 9 nights, so we looked at the 9 goddesses associated with those 9 days. And now we're on the cusp of Kali Puja coming up very soon. And so tonight we'll give our in-between Durga and Kali Puja with some of us and have prasad meal afterwards, so that we can not only just speak the Dharma and sit in the company of Sangha and think about these things deeply, but we can actually work them into our life in a way that has to do with this original worship of the true nature, or true self again. And all these slokas I started off with from the Upanishads, and one of them from the Viveka Chudamani of Shankara has to do with dissolving everything that's in the way. Yeah. And that was exactly what Samkriti wanted to do, as you know, because we've been looking at the Akshi Upanishad now for over a year, and we've arrived at the, I think, 18th sloka, and out of these 48 slokas. And you remember it started off with Samkriti going to the sun god. So if he went to the sun god, that means he would have to go inside. So how to explain that? In terms of outer and inner again, last night I had a dream. So I touched something very powerful with my dream hand. As I grabbed onto it, and I was immediately transported into space, and the stars opened up, and I went through these channels into space, and millions of stars went by and everything, and I arrived at this land. And I thought to myself, I don't believe in outer space. I don't believe in people up there. Why am I going into outer space? And then I realized, oh, I'm not in outer space. I'm in inner space. That you know, the outer space stars are a reflection of the inner space stars. I'm actually going inward. And it was simple, maybe oversimplified, but very profound to have it in a dream. And then I saw these people coming forth, and I was with them, and I met one person who passed away several years ago and was now reincarnated. This was their new lifetime. And only 2 or 3 years had passed since they died. They were already in their 20s in this other realm. So anyway, that's sort of this idea of Samkriti repairing into the inner realm of his own consciousness. Everything comes from internal. The second city. If there's no things anymore, then it's beyond the second city. You have to take that into account too. I mean, we were just listening to the gospel being read here, and God is with form and beyond both form and formlessness. So you have to realize that when things are going on, when objects are seen, when time is passing, when space appears to you, that if you've been able to divinize it or see it with divine eyes, with the third eye open kind of thing, that's still the realm of name and form you're looking at. But and there is something beyond it, out of which it came. But you're basically looking at the seeds. So everything you see out here is the effect of a cause that started with seeds. In the beginning was the word. The seeds are words. They're thoughts, really. And if you study this for a long time, the mantra being the key to that again, then all of a sudden it'll kick in over years. And I saw it happening with our founder, Lex Hixon, and I heard it discussed by Tibetan teachers and swamis, and trying to get an inkling of that connection that would, as the Advaita say, would take the waking state and render it into the dreaming state into one state. Bahir antaram va, Shankara says. You take the outer and the inner and you render it all into one state. Then you meditate on that state and you pass your time contentedly and get free. So, or Purnamadaha, Purnamidam, Purnam, the famous peace chant. What's in here is infinite. What's out there, finite in nature, is also infinite. From the infinite, the finite has come. Yet being infinite, only infinite remains. So you end up with this summation or this consummation, or this siddhanta, if you want it in Sanskrit, that all is Brahman. And you couldn't have, there's no chance you could have seen that or understood that if you hadn't have gone through the practice and the process. Proved it to yourself. Even words from a luminary wouldn't have done it for you. So when experience begins to meld with experience, inner and outer, where that juncture of things is happening, the vyahritis they're called, the sacred conjunctions, like bur, bhuva, swaha, or jagrat, swapna, and sushupti, waking, dreaming, and deep sleep, where these sets of threes and twos and everything are beginning to be dissolved back into their source, which is little ou, probably maybe say the big self, the great self. You dissolve all the little self back into the great self as an offering, the peace chant says. And then you're having these profound experiences. The very Maya you were walking around in is now the Brahman that you're walking around in, and nothing really happened. So some ignorance got, taken away from your mind, that's all. There was no transformation. The things that you were imagining weren't real to begin with. So how can you say I grew, or I got enlightened, or anything like that? It's a matter of just one eye open living all the time. It's like when they came into the world and had two eyes and 2 ears and everything, they never abandoned their single eye, and they never abandoned their om, their one ear, the primal sound. So they never forgot those things. It was a part of their divine memory, and they brought it with them, kept it while they were here, and suffered for it, keeping it while they were here, and were vilified and hated because they represented it here. So that dream last night then was very beautiful. I realized that I was going back into inner space, and that this is just a reflection of that. The stars, you look up, a billion suns in the sky are just thoughts that you had that are the gross results of that. And see how much power there is then in the sun god. So I went on a little bit waxing eloquent about that and used a little of my own experience, but basically that's what Samkriti, if you remember all the way back to our first lessons, wanted to do. He repaired to the solar world, he bowed down to the sun. That's Surya, sun god, not a sun in the physical sky only, as I hope now we know, or can imagine, or envision. He glorified the sun god by means of the science of the wise. He said, "Salutations to you who are the power of the eye, who are the wonder of the skies, who are the commander of the armies of light, who is salutations to the darkness, which is just an excess of light. Salutation to divine energy, salutations to light, salutations to light." So this is how he butters up the sun god so he can get what he wants from him. You see, he wants this Brahmagyan, this highest wisdom. He wants to make absolutely sure that he's understood everything just right. I know because I had to field a four-page email a couple days ago from a person who wanted to know that everything he was thinking was just right. I had to read through all of this, and well, there's a few things there that are not according to the Vedanta science. So why don't you write me back just a few questions with a little tiny commentary, and then, so people can go to great lengths to try and check their wisdom, and it's right that they should, but sometimes there's an outpouring of words and no inpouring of listening power. You see, that's why our first doorway to yoga is silence. You're silent so you can hear and take it in. Then it will corroborate or not with what you know or think you know. So he says, here rises the sun, thousand-rayed, existent in myriad ways, the life of all animate beings. I meditate on you, who are omniform, compassionate, omniscient, ambrosial, the essence of light, the scorcher of foes. Salutations to the Lord, the Sun, the offspring of the infinite, the power of the eye, the flood of days, the flood of days. So the sun grants us our flood of days. It's been a wonderful sloka that I took in when I first read this Upanishad and meditated on it, that day after day comes and the sun is giving you this experience of multitude of days that you get to experience. Therefore, glorified by the means of the science of the wise, because his Samkriti's teachers have told him, if you see a divinity, make sure you say this and that to them. Walk up and say, "Hey man, how you doing?" Or "How's the weather?" or something. They want to hear this, that you're coming to them in the right spirit. And he said, whichever Brahmana studies without break this science of the wise never contracts any eye disease. None is born blind in his family. Teaching this to 8 Brahmanas, one becomes perfect in the science. Whoever knows this is magnified. Then Sankriti said to the son, teach me Brahmavid. First thing he says after he salutes them and, propitiates him basically. Teach me Brahmavid. Teach me the vid, the science of Brahman. And his son immediately said, I shall set forth the knowledge of reality so hard to come by. And from then, over the last few visits, I've taken you through 17 slokas really, that I won't, I could read them, but you'll look back on your notes and also on the live streaming recordings. You can see the Akshi Upanishad is listed right there. You can tap on it and see all the previous classes if you want to review or catch up. So we went through a number of charts. I have them all in the margin here. It must be a couple dozen charts already just to explain the first 17 slokas of this, up through the first 17 slokas, which 16 and 17 said, fixing the steady mind on the truthful import of the scriptures, busy with the recitation of spiritual texts that are proper to the hermitages of the ascetics, one should expend a long life seated on a bed of stone or a slab, diverting the self with ramblings in the forest made beautiful by his own placid mind. So, render nature beautiful and then go into it. Are people doing that? Are they trying to dominate over it or get its resources or various things? But that's why the old cliche of just watching a flower bloom is actually not that bad an idea. If you slow you down and see the beauty, like I was walking, when was that? Last night, you see, in front of this building there's just a carpet of yellow leaves. Just a carpet of them, like that thick. It just covered the whole sidewalk. So all of a sudden I wasn't in the city. I was on this bed of leaves. And Sri Ramakrishna used to say, whenever a tree is going off, that's a puja. God is celebrating. You see, a puja, just like we'll do tonight in front of the altar. So nature, if you can see it that way, is always showering forth bliss. The trees shower bliss upon us. Our children shower bliss upon us. The corn is showering bliss upon us. Our crops and so forth, as it says in the Upanishad. So, but do we see it that way? We can't, number one, take it for granted, or number two, strip the divinity out of it and render it just physical or just material or just commonplace. That's not how God sees things, if God sees it all. Meister Eckhart said that. If you want to see God, you must see how God sees. So God would see with one eye if he saw it all. There's a higher center than seeing. You see, you go beyond form and then you're in the formless light. And you are that light. That's a higher experience, as we say, which Vedanta tends to bring out along with Buddhism and Zen and so forth. So, made beautiful with a placid mind, sit in the forest, as it were. I mean, you could sit in this house and be in a forest because trees are all around you, and just be aware of everything, and then dissolve it back into its source, and that source into its source, and so forth, until finally you're satisfied in the self. You see everything in the self. And we chanted that in the Bhagavad Gita at retreat last week. When the sage sees everything in the self, and the self in, and the small self in the great self, and the great self in me, then he's fit for the Brahman state. See? So it's all a matter of taking it back by degrees from where it came. Take it back. See? As you put it out there, it's risky. See, it's got things that will catch on it, like a fine fabric walking through by a thorn bush, see, or through a forest of thorns. It'll catch, you see. So bring it back to the source always, and live in that way. Render it all into one indivisible state. Meditate on that state, and pass your time contentedly. Be free. So then we get to the sloka that we want to jump to today, is 18. As a result of his meritorious actions, the righteous sadhaka, that's a spiritual practitioner, passes his time in the delights of detachment, repeatedly studying the positive shastras. So that's, shastra means scripture, particularly the non-dual scriptures, which in most cases you rather have to retreat to India to find something non-dual like that. So you've got scriptures like Avadhuta Gita, Ashtavakra Samhita, and the Upanishads are quite non-dual, most of it. And where they talk just about the relationship of the apparently individualized soul with the Supreme Soul. See, Jivatman with Paramatman. So you think you're a Jiva, but you're a Jivatman. You see, and so the Jivahood has been assumed by you. Gender, characteristics, personality, country, nation, all that's been assumed. And so you take that all away, take it back to the source, see who projected it, and then as he said here later, he had come to realize that everything was just either the grace of God or the effect of his own karma. So that's kind of what he's boiled it down to. So the grace of God, kind of hard to say that in most cases. And when it's upon you, then you probably wouldn't be saying it at all. So, but the idea of that everything being the effect of my own karma, you see, each day I get up and I have a certain karma that I'm running out here. Even if I've gotten rid of my past karma and I don't risk my future karma, I have a present karma that created this body. And now I have to live it and work it out. It's called prarabdha in Sanskrit. I don't have any kinds of ideas or teachings or words like that in our most cultures, and certainly not in America. So there's these three kinds of wheels of karma turning, maybe four, if you talk about sanchita, spontaneous arising karma. But the prarabdha karma, you can't annul it. You have to live it out. It's like and that's why I'm bringing it up, because that's why we're going to start with the karma chart here. So Shankara gave again the idea of a potter, you see, pushing a pedal, spinning the wheel, and so he's, pot spinning, and he's like shaping it. When he's got it perfect, it looks like a candle in a windowless place. It's spinning, but it's perfect, so there's no angularities, so the thing just looks like it's not spinning. So he walks away and lets it dry, but the pot goes on spinning. You see, it's perfect, but it goes on spinning. So that's the way the realized soul comes to live in the body. He's a great pretender, he's a great actor, he's a great enjoyer, as Shiva told one of the rishis, Lord Shiva. Because that rishi went to Lord Shiva like some Kritis going to the sun god and ask about it. He says, yeah, you should live like a great enjoyer, a great actor, and a great pretender, kind of. So that's what happens to the soul who has to remain in the body, and even after enlightenment has dawned. You're like that wheel that continues to spin. Finally it'll stop. You see the pot spinning on the wheel. Finally it'll stop, and then the body will go, and he won't have any karma, prabdha or otherwise. But the prabdha is, is epitomized by that continual spinning of the wheel even after it's perfected. So that has to be the only solution for that prabdha karma is stay near Brahman. Just keep close to God in your life. You've got a body, you've got a life, you've got apparent imperfections and so forth. The world will try and point those out and enhance them, and turn you into a fool and so forth. But you shouldn't listen. You should stay in that perfection, of innate perfection of your soul, until the prabdha karma passes. Stay close to Brahman is the only way to deal with that kind of karma. I'm giving you a little bit of advance on that because we're about to look at a karma chart. So that's because as a result of meritorious action, the righteous sadhaka passes his time in the delights of detachment and studying the scriptures. Like Swamiji in the mountains, he says, just all I need is the scripture. Sitting here in the snow in the Himalayas, I'm fine. I don't need food, I don't need anything. I have the fire of yoga to keep me warm. He said, just give me a scripture to read once in a while, and my own mind. So in this 18th sloka of the Akshi Upanishad, I keep saying Ashki because that's a Sufi word, but that I know about, but Akshi Upanishad, Akshi means Akshatam, means third eye really. So this Upanishad is named after that. Sort of like Teja Bindu we're studying in San Francisco means point of light. You see, so a lot of it's about this higher center, that you get Brahmagyan when you come to this higher center. So in this 18th sloka, we're still at the third level. Just I showed this because we've gone through already the studies with Acharya, Guru, the crossing transmigratory life, and achieving non-attachment is where these slokas are now coming from. What does that remind you? Crosses transmigratory life. What does it remind you of? Giving up that Bhuvaswa idea and going to the first city. You're done with the world. Whether you renounce it or not, as a monk, doesn't matter. You're done with it, and now you've entered in a resident of her real city, of the real world, and everything now shines with the light of the goddess, and that Tripura Sundari, the beauty of that. So that's why then everything will take on that beauty. So that's why they would want to do things that people of this day and age aren't doing, like practice becoming a sadhaka, spend time, with God. I'm here in Portland. It's like, I say God, and they thought I said dog. I say meditate, they thought I said medicate. So everything's contrary here. If you read tricycle, they thought I said get on a bicycle. So, it's just the city of contrariness, and most cities in the world are like that. So if you have to engage in sadhana, that's the cutting edge. You have to hear the dharma and work it into your life. What else will give you peace, if not that? You can get the peace that passes all understanding later, but you need that peace of mind first. And this is the way that the rishis, the seers of truth, who have known truth for time out of mind over cycles, are advising us to do. Render that world, deify it, render it sacred, and then study in it, meditate in it, act without acting in it, having given up all the old, worn-out, quotidian ways of mundane human convention and so forth, and take up a new residence. It's like being reborn again. It's another way of defining that. So I just showed this. We're pretty much on the asansarga level of that, and we won't get to stage 4 until sloka 29. then we'll start encountering some of these higher stages. Meanwhile, remember, we are studying the Akshi Upanishad here, and I put this up for you just so you know. Have a star map, as I like to say. You are here in the world of the Upanishads, because these are worlds of words. And these words are spoken by the rishis, and the slokas in those worlds make up everything there and everything that comes out of it. A word, everything comes out of a word, a great thought. The word being the first of them, and all the other words come out of that main word, and then their thoughts, and then they get put together, and then 4 stages of the word they call it, and then when they're put together, the meaning is attached to them, and then they come out as words. So you can't then, if you're a member of that outer city, you can't then look at the scriptures, the revealed scriptures, anymore as something ordinary or something I just sit to read. You can't look at this world as something ordinary anymore. It's the goddess in form, and even if you're only in the outer city. So you've had the inner transformation already, and now you have to learn how to live in it. As to say, ask our teachers that. Says, well, they say that when you got the mantra, then that at that moment you were enlightened. Is that true? Yes, but the mind has to catch up with the fact that you're enlightened. Slower than the mind is the body, and slower than faster than the mind is then your intelligence, and faster than your intelligence is her intelligence. So you're going to have to shift levels of understanding, and strangely enough, an opposite of what the world thinks, you don't go running faster to try and catch up with it. You slow it all down till you're sitting in one place, like under a tree for 49 days, or out in the wilderness for 12 days and 12 nights. Whatever you have to do, slow it all down so that you put the world aside, because it's not real. And then you remember, oh, I see, I'm just at the feet of the goddess right now. I always was, always will be. My mind imagined otherwise. So then if we turn these charts, which we should do so we get some headway made on Sloka 18, those were the frontispiece charts for today, then we come to these charts that we want to look at in terms of, as a result of meritorious actions, the person comes to practice sadhana, becomes a sadhaka. Almost like a Jewish word there, isn't it? Sadhaka. I always thought it was Sadhaka, I think, is the name of a Jewish teacher. So it says, but this is sadhaka. So you become a practitioner, and there you see on this chart on my left, that chart on karma yoga. Now, this all comes about under different levels of action. That is, your disciplined action will of course net you meritorious karma, but undisciplined action or restless action or slothful action or doing action without realizing that it's opposite, like Krishna says, you must discriminate between karma, akarma, and vikarma. So first of all, you would have to discriminate between meritorious action and forbidden action. Some people don't even know about that anymore. So you have to separate those two. So one would lead you out of immorality and into morality. But then morality is not quite enough, so you're going to have to discriminate between meritorious action and no action, which we know nothing about here. So that's going to lead you from dharma into truth, see, from morality into beyond the dualities of virtue and vice. No man, no woman will ever reach enlightenment if they cling to the fact that that virtue and vice are real. They're going back and forth, caught in a trap with that. It's all about I'm better than you, I'm worse than you, or I'm no good, or I'm better, I'm the best, I'm the greatest. It's all, again, machinations of the ego. So you have to get beyond that duality and get to this idea that no action is preferable to the seers, that God is inactive. So, there are many slokas that indicate that. Free from action, pure and perfect, and faultless, one of the slokas says. So you have to become like that, or become like your true self. So here at the top of this chart, one of Sri Ramakrishna's direct disciples, Swami Abhedananda, I found a really great chant in his writings. He was here in the West just after Vivekananda was here at the same time. He says, and this is really apropos to the day, ordinarily we make ourselves like machines, laboring without cessation, until at last we grow weary, discouraged, and unhappy. When, however, we realize that there is within us something which transcends all activities, which is unchanging, immovable, and eternally at rest, then we can accomplish our daily tasks without discouragement or loss of strength, because we have learned the great philosophy of work. So everyone is doing karma and suffering karma in the world. Everyone. But it's not until you turn karma into a yoga that that ceases to be. You have to take action and make it an art form, and then do it consciously. Work is worship, Vivekananda called that. Service is self-surrender. Labor as love. Those are things that he would write out when he was trying to communicate it to us in English. So everyone's doing karma, but they're all suffering karma. How do you not suffer karma? How do you work without working, or work and get only meritorious action back? By following just the ordinances of the scriptures in work, Sri Krishna says in the Gita. Otherwise, things will, kick back on you, and that's happening to people all the time. Even if it appears otherwise for a cycle or so, or for a short time. So Swami Abhedananda, as we say here, hits the nail on the head when he says that. And he also wrote this song that had a lot to do with it. This stotram. Gunahina sutan aparada yutan kripayadya samudara mohagatan tarinim bhavas sagara karaparim pranamami param jananim jagatam. Om. So he says, do thou this day, O Mother, save thy children, bound in Maya's chains. Increase virtue, take vice away. Destroy all blemishes with the power of thy name. For thine is the only ship to ferry across this earthly sea. O great Mother of the worlds, be our salutations ever unto thee. And one of the verses of his Sharda Ashtakam, he's writing this to Holy Mother, the living Mother, Sri Ramakrishna's divine consort. So you have to get beyond virtue and vice, using one to get over the other, and then get into this realm of selfless works. And if you were to describe selfless works, it would be at the bottom of this list. The abode of action in inaction. The Upanishad says, there are two birds, closely related and very much alike, which perch on the same tree. One of them eats ripe fruits, the other, however, refrains from eating any fruits. It only watches as a spectator. I would venture to say that the bird who's eating ripe fruits occasionally gets a hold of an unripe one and gets sick. But the idea is it's always looking to the upper branch where this bird is sitting in the sun, regal, actionless, perfect, and not partaking anymore of the tree of life. That is the tree of life and death. Or living in those three worlds of change. Is taking up residence at Mother's feet in the Tripura Sundari realm. So the abode of action and inaction, is an art form that is learned by those beings who know the real meaning of inaction. If you were to take the next level down, then you'd be talking about the sanctuary of selfless service. So you're still involved in works. There's some mission there to do, but you have to do it all selflessly. So you say that selfishness really marks the demonic kind of people, not just, vile and evil and doing all acts out of insensitively to harm and hate on purpose, but people who are ignorant are doing good works of stupefaction. See? They think they're doing good, but they're doing it in a way that's not conscious. But if Holy Mother would say this about that, using a metaphor, a flash of lightning is seen in a window pane, but not in the wooden shutters. What does she mean? Only the pure of mind can see God in others and serve Him there. In such beings, spiritual power gets awakened and liberation is attained. So these are, you wouldn't see that flash of lightning in the shutters. I mean, you don't see that light in ordinary people. The window reflects the light. So you've got this window of the great soul who is always reflecting that light and working for the highest good of beings. If you stepped yet another step down into the world of works, then you'd call this the castle of charitable concerns. So here's where, altruism and such things have their way. Buddha said, "Do not think lightly of merit, saying, 'It will not come to me.' By the constant fall of water drops, a pitcher is filled. Likewise, the wise person accumulates merit little by little, and therefore becomes full of merit." So, punya and papa is the teaching in Buddhism, of course, that you give up doing the demerit and you take to meritorious actions only. And it's like watering the flowers and not the weeds. Pretty soon, weeds will go away. That's called pratipaksha bhavanam in Vedanta. If you were still to come down another level into the layer of works that are available here to people, you'd have the domicile of dire duty. Vivekananda says about it, "Do not work yourself out, it is of no use. Duty is the midday sun whose fierce rays are burning the very vitals of humanity. It is necessary for a time as a discipline. Beyond that, it is a morbid dream." Well, you might say there's where you get that finer definition of how to work. And not just suffer karma, but turn it into a yoga, a karma yoga. If work is not seen as an end-all and be-all of life, but it's seen as a way to discipline or purify your mind, then you'll get beyond works and be able to do them effortlessly when you have to do them, which is, we've already explained with these higher levels of work. Work is worship. Now we're starting to descend into some very difficult areas, though, of karma. This one's called the shanty of selfless works. I don't know if you've ever been to a third world city and see the shanty towns and all that and walk through them, but it's not shanti we're talking about here, it's shanty. There are these hovels, as we say above, but basically Sri Ramakrishna said about that, and very humorously so, "Once a man took up residence in an old hut. Soon the winds began to shake it. The man remembered that Hanuman was the son of the god of the wind. So he prayed to Hanuman, 'Please don't destroy my hut.' But the winds did not abate. Next, he remembered that Hanuman was the devotee of Ram, whose younger brother was Lakshmana, and he declared, 'This hut is actually Lakshmana's. Don't destroy it.' The winds continued. Finally, the man cried out, going to the source, 'This is Ram's own hut.' But the winds blew only stronger. As the hut began to collapse around him, the man rushed out from the hut with a curse, yelling, 'This is the devil's own hut.'" So this is what we will feel about works done selfishly in the end, and at the end of life, basically, that I was not satisfied by the world of work alone. In fact, it created a desire in me to come back again and do some more. And that is rebirth then. And with your ancestors, they're constantly involved in this samsaric loop, as Lord Buddha called it. And they want to attain things from a world, actually from 3 worlds, that we just explained are not real. You can't get substance out of a substanceless thing. So Sri Ramakrishna said, the hog plum. See, a hog plum is, the world is like a hog plum. The hog plum, if you look at it, it's all seed and skin and pit and everything, and tiny, tiny little bit of flesh. So if you can get rid of the pit and this flesh and the stem and everything, got this little bit of flesh, oh, I got a little flesh of the hog plum here, I'll eat it, and it gives you indigestion. So if the great souls describe the world like that, then you might want to consider if it is really your oyster or not. And maybe you might want to look somewhere else for a world that is truer and realer, like Divine Mother's Tripura Sundari cities. Take up new residence, be born again into a realm where if you did do works at all, it would resemble more charitable works or selfless works, or even the art of inaction, which is beyond all that. They don't act, those highest beings don't act to try and help the world because the world doesn't exist. And they don't act to make you comfortable in the world, because the world, that will never be the case. They act to get you out of the world. So you'll renounce it like they did. Then if you come back to it, you are unattached to it, and your works will live forever. Who remembers the works of ordinary great people very long? But we remember the works of the great souls. Their names last forever. Sri Ramakrishna said that. He said the great names like Krishna and Buddha and Jesus and so forth are like icebergs in an ocean that never melt. All of the icebergs melt. But people will go through billions of year cycles. And then another billions of years cycle will begin again, a new cosmic cycle. And everything else will have dissolved and melted by then. But the people who come back to this new cycle will still remember Krishna, will still remember Ram, will still remember Jesus. Those will last forever, those names. And because they're stored in the Word. And billions of souls meditated on them and rendered them the essence that they are. They realized them. At the lowest level, Sri Krishna describes the hovel of heinous acts this way. The demonic know not what to do and what to refrain from. Bound by 100 ties of hope, given over to lust and anger, they strive to secure, by unjust means, hoards of wealth for sensual enjoyment. I don't think I've ever heard a statement in English put together so perfectly in so few words about the nature of the world. Shall I read it again, or shall we? They'll have to wince all over again, you see. So I wanted to go through that chart, it's a Vedananda's beautiful quote, to explain sloka 18 of this. And now let's look here at just this one square. You know the famous 4 yogas chart? I'm looking at a mirror right there. Somebody's framed it over here on the wall. And so we've looked at the 4 yogas as a synthesis before, but before we depart this sloka, and so we do understand karma and my point of turning it into a yoga, because since everyone's doing it, and most people aren't doing study of scriptures like the slokas, and most people aren't meditating daily on the non-dual Brahman, what to speak of Ishvara, and then a lot of people aren't doing very much worship. Everyone's doing action. So the point then would be to take something that's potentially negative and render it into a positive path, karma yoga. And I think Vivekananda thought that way too. Is why he said, it used to be considered the lowest of all yogas, but he wanted to take it and place it on a new pedestal in this day and age, because it would be a way up of people pulling themselves up to realize that duty is the scorching midday sun that burns the very vitals of humanity. He had seen it in India for sure, in his country at that time, and what had happened to it. So it would be nice if we could synthesize all 4 yogas, and I encourage all those who come to SRV and study to take this new religion of the age, as Vivekananda called it, the 4 yogas, and do a thorough study of it. But in accord with this sloka 18, let's look at karma yoga points here. We've seen examples of levels here, but let's look at the points that beings like Sri Krishna would pull forth out of, so we can really make it as a list we can think of. First of all, engage only in obligatory actions. So if I have to go run out and help the world, well, number one, you're probably not ready for that yet, and you're taking on work that's beyond your capacity. You don't know the distinction between action and inaction yet, and now you're becoming a fire-darting reformer. No, that's not going to work. You're trying to change people from their religion to yours. No, that's not going to work. Never has worked, never will. So you probably ought to get a lot of these dharmic principles in place first, and just do that by engaging in actions that are scripturally ordained, is how Krishna puts it in the Gita. Obligatory actions, what you're called upon to do only. And let Mother save the world, if she's going to, if she even deems it worth saving. She probably is telling you, but that's just a projection. Here's the real world, my feet over here. It's called Tripura Sundari. Make the transition. Give up the world. Didn't all the great ones do that? So renounce action done for selfish motive. Perform all action with evenness of mind. In other words, don't perform it with restlessness of mind. That's what people are basically doing out there, because that will bring back restless effects. Like attracts like and gives way to like. So it would be a very good lesson for you just to say, I will do everything evenly and in sattva. I won't go out the door, Vivekananda said, in the day unless my mind is in balance. See? Even if the boss says you'll get fired for not coming to work. I'm sorry, I can't come to work today. I'll create karma for me and you and the rest of the employees. I have to stay home. See what he says then. Or go to work with a restless mind and commit a lot of mistakes, get fired anyway. See, and then teach him a lesson. So, people are going to work sick now. See? Too bad there's dishonesty amongst people. If people are just honest, basically honest, and they call up and said, I'm sick, instead of, I'm pretending to be sick or something, which you may need to do sometimes too, I admit. But, you want to come on retreat, then sometimes you call and say, well, I'm a little sick of the world. See? I'm sick, you see. I'm sick of the world, I have to go on retreat. Find a way to get to the Lord's feet and away from the ogre of the world, or what Vivekananda called the old witch of the world. So that's one of my favorite points you can tell. Do all your work with evenness of mind and not slothful or restless. It's just really a practical matter. Do not seek the fruits of action. That is going to be very hard to commit to convince the businessman of. I've talked to swamis who've tried, and it's not registering in their minds yet. You see, they do everything without desire for the fruit. Detach from all the outcomes of action, whether they're good, bad, neutral. That pulls you out into the realm of success and failure, another duality that's very difficult to overcome. Whenever Sri Ramakrishna was doing actions, he would say, I not of myself do I do. See, Mother does it all. And so he wouldn't take any responsibility for the outcome of the work. He would just do the work selflessly and let Mother work out the result. If you must see as God sees, then And that's going to be kind of a difficult problem if you try and change the world when the mother has already rendered it a changing world. Again, trying to change. So Maya will always have the upper hand on you, and you'll have some sort of expectation for something you thought was better, but she was thinking maybe, I'll destroy it. Sri Ramakrishna said that. He said once a doctor came and said, "Don't worry, madam, I'll cure your son," because he was dying of a disease. "Don't worry, madam, I'll cure your son." And God laughed because he knew he was going to take the life of that soul. Laughed at the doctor, you see. So it doesn't matter good and bad, and so forth and so on. It's what is that you have to see. So you'll be held in better form if you realize that birth and death are unreal, and that as a sticker I bought at the health food store there, they said, "She runs the show." The only thing in the whole store I wanted to buy was this sticker, "She runs the show." It was actually about Mother Pele in Hawaii. You're walking on, you'd be drowning in water if she didn't produce this lava for you to cool it for you so you could walk on it. She runs the show. Detach from all the outcomes of action. Perform all work as worship, which of course borrowed from Swamiji there. Utilize all work to serve God and mankind, which if you wanted a deeper inspection of that, do not serve mankind. If you serve mankind, he turns into an ego. Serve God and mankind, because that will then cut down the ego. So that's how you would also attain equanimity of mind, because if you serve someone and you thought you were doing good to them, and they got all prideful, then they do some act in pride, like in restlessness, and you suffer the karma along with them because you were responsible for turning them that way, you see. So it's all collective karma out there as well as individual karma, and you have to be very careful then how you act. Be like a bird flying through the sky, it leaves no trace, Sri Ramakrishna said. Work meticulously but with detachment. So this whole list of things is not an excuse for you to do slovenly work or to renounce work before you're ready. Just read the first 6 slokas, first 6 chapters of the Bhagavad Gita. Sri Ramakrishna puts it right in order. Karma, karma sannyasa, karma jnana sannyasa, how to renounce work, because work is superior to non-work as long as you're not pure yet. It's only a very pure person who can give up works and do it in the right way, and actually still be a benefit to society and humanity just by their very presence, without lifting a finger. So 4 yogas, a wonderful chart we put together with all the bullet points of each. We looked specifically at Karma Yoga for Sloka 18, and now we're going to make headway, which I try and like to do, but I do like to unwrap these slokas as deeply as I can for us. The next sloka then, let's read it, 19. One's perception of reality becomes clear only in due course. The enlightened one reaching the 3rd stage, that's why I brought this. The enlightened one reaching the 3rd stage experiences this for himself. So, talking about perception of reality, our own perception of reality, if it's shifting, then that's called, our mind is expanding in its capacity to know Brahman. May our bodies experience health, may our life force flow unimpeded, and may our minds expand in their capacity to know Brahman. Can you know Brahman with the mind? Not the ordinary mind, but can you can know Brahman with the illumined mind, because the illumined mind is Brahman. You see, it took away all the things that were not Brahman, like dissolving mind, ego, intellect, senses, elements. All those things were not Brahman. You weren't seeing them as Brahman, because you were living in the world of change, Bhurbhuvasvaha. So you were seeing them all as change, as real. You thought change was real. but only the changeless Brahman is real. What didn't you understand about that statement? You know, when the seers said, "Read my lips," you know, Brahman is changeless, actionless, perfect, pure, divine. You should have understood that right away, you know, and then measured yourself against that changeless reality, and then done away with your own misperception of reality until you had the right perception of reality. So that's what he's saying here. One's perception of reality becomes clear only in due course of time. So let me show you a chart about that. And I think we have, I think it was back in the lesson and slokas, early slokas of Akshi Upanishad, where we took a brief look at this but didn't really go through it. So let's look at it. It's called Progress to True Freedom. Now, if you are starting down here near the bottom, we're given two kinds of guides up both columns. The first is the gunas, good old gunas. So I said, he said, don't do any work in restlessness, right? Krishna did, and I just repeated his sentiments out of the Gita. If you fall below rajas, you get to slothfulness or tamas, and then there's a combination of having some energy, but all doing it with wrong orientation. So that's pretty much these. There are usually three gunas, sattva, rajas, and tamas, but these are color-coded to show you how they overlap. So I mean, some way you might like be sort of sattvic, but there's some restlessness in your balance, you know, and vice versa. You might be sort of rajasic that day, but you're falling down into a kind of slothfulness, and you feel it coming upon you, and so you have to regroup and try and turn everything back towards balance, or sattva. So the three gunas are a wonderful teaching in Vedanta that is peculiar only to Vedanta. You don't find it in any other teaching, in any other darshanas or religions. I mean, we'd be tempted to call them moods, but they're calling them modes. The difference is that you're not to blame. If you say this is my mood, then you're to blame. But if you say this is a mode of nature, you're not to blame. Otherwise, Christ would be at fault for the dark night of the soul. Was he at fault for that? Or was that just a mode that came over everything, that covered everything, that made everything dark? Not just in his mind, in the whole collective mind, and in the individual minds too. So these modes are constantly shifting, and you're not to personalize them at all. You're to witness them. They're not you. That's one of the first teachings in the Gita, is that, you know, action does not take place in you. It takes place in nature. Well, these are the modes of nature. So action and wrong action and right action, doesn't matter what kind of action, unless you're talking about inaction, which of course transcends the whole shooting match. All action is taking place in nature. It's not taking place in you. You're actionless. You're perfect. The you we're talking about here is the Atman, not the ego. The indivisible self, not the individual self. So, with that explained as one of our gauges, how to measure our modes, what people are calling moods, but how to measure the mode we're in, or the mode that any family is in, or the mode that any city is in, or any country, or any world. What mode are they predominantly in at that particular time is a very great art of looking upon the worlds of change. So that you realize you're the witness of them, or you can be the witness of them, and you're not pulled into them all the time, into every little, you know, horrible political thing that happens. You know, like, so you end up spending your whole day on the TV talking about every little thing that some fool does, see, and just not giving it up. And you'll never get around to talking about Brahman that way. You'll never get around to talking about dharma that way. You'll never get around to talking about true religion that way. You'll forget what true philosophy is. You'll forget the purpose of life. You'll lose your peace of mind. And you're just pretty much right there all the time. And I'm describing American society there just in case I wasn't clear. American politics at the time, American business, for generally speaking, maybe even rather specifically. So the other gauge on this side is more defined. Let's take them really quick. If you're in tundra or darkness or sleep, you see, that's why you're talking about waking state, the ordinary waking state of beings. That the waking state is all that exists, and if I go inside, like say I did last night and went up into inner stars, you see, that was just a dream fantasy I had, and that was not real. I have to come out here and see physical stars in order to feel like it's all real, you see. Like, oh, I'm back in the real world again. It's just really pretty much the opposite. You just came back to the unreal world from a more real world. And since people don't think that way, then, this world becomes real. And Sri Ramakrishna said, the more lifetimes you live in ignorance, the more they think the world is real. So they'll come back to it with their ancestors all the time, thinking it's real. Nobody will think otherwise. And you'll go against the grain if you try and think otherwise. So if that darkness of the waking state as being the only reality is upon you, then you have ignorance about what? Your own life force, you see, energy. He just said that back in this last sloka, right, about energy. We were talking about when he was praising the sun god, salutations to the primordial energy. See, so if you've lost your primordial energy, you've lost track of your breath. You've lost your breath, which connects to your primal energy. Prana, it's basically it's called. Man does not live by bread alone means he lives by prana, really. Ancestors are all living by prana. That's what causes the transmigratory process from birth to growth to death to old age back to rebirth with your ancestors. It's all an addiction to life force. So the Upanishad says, be better if you came into this whole thing with a pure mind. You were born with a pure mind, but if not, then it means you've lost track of your prana, so you should default to the next best practice, which would be to get a hold of your life force. This is where you lose it, you see, and this is where it's jagged, you see. You've seen sine waves, so this is a raw prana. It's jagged, it's aggravating, it's causing a lot of problems for you and others when you go anywhere with that kind of energy. It's egotistic, it's selfish, and until you refine it, the seers don't even want you in their company. Go away, go back to the world. Learn to refine your prana and make it smooth and even, which is what's happening when you are mastering the higher gunas. So probably enough said about that, but you've lost your vital energy, you've lost the meaning to things, you've lost your selflessness, your higher intelligence and the soul are all obscured by these lower gunas, which is a mode that you're in, that collective society is in, so obviously people aren't in remembrance of these divine things. I was just talking to a businessman yesterday about that when I went to pick up some print supplies. Then Tamo Rajas, bondage. There you see, well, before we go on, let's look at this other gauge in the side here. For tamas, the characterization is the word bhranti. It's delusion. Bhranti darshana. You're not seeing clearly. So it's based basically in spriha and desire, or desire, and lokayatika, materialism. So desire for materials, for objects, senses and objects, is pretty much the waking state is all about. I was walking up the stairs this morning after meditation, thinking about the class, and halfway up the stairs I thought, this is all a world of desire. Because I had just seen a woman walking across the street with a baby as I went by the door. So she was carrying this baby with her. So mothers want to have babies, and it's all about desire. And there's very little of anything higher in it. Does it want the baby so it can get enlightened and not have to be reborn again? No. But that's what the Buddha would tell you. You want the baby because you want to have control over a soul, because you wanted to satisfy a desire to have children, you wanted to have a family. There wasn't any thought of anything higher for the soul in that at all. In a naive way, when you first started the family, you thought, oh, you know, I'll make everything all right in their life. They'll have more money than I did. They'll have better parents than I did. And then it doesn't happen, because none of your actions are done in reality. You're not thinking right. It's Bhranti Darshana. You started off the whole thing thinking in the wrong way. So that's not the dharmic householder that India knew at one time. And it's the I must satisfy my desires at all cost life. See? And devil take the hindmost. And let's get into a society full of people like that, and then kind of, you know, I mean, sometimes I feel like people write me and they should just, instead of calling me Babaji, they should say, "Dear Guilty Conscience." They should name me Guilty Conscience. Because they write me and say, "Dear Guilty Conscience, dear my guilty conscience." Because I get people talking to me, you know, in the emails about all of this, making excuses for themselves or reading out their tale of woes. Holy Mother said that too. They come to me and read out their tale of woes, but none of them ask me for enlightenment. They ask me for things. Will you please give me this? Would you make sure my family is safe? Would you make sure my husband recovers from his disease? Would you make sure this and that? None of them ever asked me for God realization. And this was in India in the 1800s and 1900s. So it's all a world of desire you're in, if you're in the Bhur-Bhuva-Swa quotient. As soon as you step over into Tripura Sundari's world, then it's all fulfilled, you see. I already have all this. She gave it to me. Earth, air, fire, water, and ether were mine before I was even born. In a subtle sense, see. Did I have to come out and make them solid and liquid and gaseous here? And then suffer them? So there is a whole different way of thinking about things called dharma. And even higher than that, something called acid-like truth, which is like cold water thrown in your face, if you've been living in the tepid water of lokayatika and spriha all your life, or for lifetimes. See, Sri Ramakrishna said, if you take a worm, I take a worm out of excrement and put it in pure white rice, it'll die. Do I need to explain that meaning? I'm talking about people. Vaknapak is in Bengali for men are mere worms. If a great luminary said that to you, you'd probably say, "You're my guilty conscience." Dear guilty conscience, I have something to say to you. So, fulfill your desires in the Dharma. That's what we're saying. You can't root out desires at this state of the game, you know, without leaving a lot of problem behind. You'll tear out the roots of your desire and there'll be an emptiness there. You'll damage the tender shoot of your life. So fulfill them in the Dharma. Increase your lust. Turn it towards God. Increase your desire. Turn it for desire for God realization. Increase your greed. Turn it for greed for Dharma. Increase all the things, but give them that divine turn. Yeah. And that was a sloka right out of the Tripura Sundari Upanishad too that we studied. Goat's flesh, dressed fish, pleasure of sex, worshipping the digit. You see, I mean, all those things right there that she's saying in her Upanishad, if you offer them all to her, then you get success. You get your desires fulfilled. And then, you know, wonder of wonders, you won't want to come back to this world again. Why do you want this world so bad? Why do you want embodiment so bad? because there's a lot of moha in it, you see. Your own delusion at the beginning, like, I didn't know where I came from, I don't know who I am, I don't know where I'm going, I don't know the meaning of life, so you've forgotten your energy that got you here from the inner worlds. You've forgotten the meaning of everything. You've arrived here in a selfish state, wanting things for yourself, and your higher intelligence abandoned you somewhere along the way. And so did your soul. You traded in the gold of your soul for the cheap baubles and trinkets of the ego. There's a song in India that says that. Traded in the gold of your soul for the cheap baubles and tinsel stuff, you know, shiny, worthless stuff of the ego. So, I guess that describes Thomas fairly well. I guess I can go on. Tamo Rajas would mean relating to bondage. That is what? Relating to bondage to sense objects, to pleasures, to excitements, to family, to its pastimes, feelings, and brooding. That's where it has taken at least a little bit less dark a turn. And, you know, but you could pretty much describe mundane human convention that way. I grew up in a family right across the river here in Portland. My family was into those things. And I was learning wrong from them. I wasn't learning the Dharma. You don't get the Dharma outside of India until it was given to Tibet, 700, and then in China, and so forth. And Buddha finally went all around the world, Buddhists taking it everywhere. You finally got the Dharma from India. The original Sanatana Dharma, the Adi Vidyadaiva, the divine primordial teachings, in no uncertain terms. You try and cut your teeth on those in any given lifetime. See? And then wear the body no longer. I will wear this body no longer, Buddha said. You must know me as the Buddha awakened. I am gone and gone forever. Have no more hope for me for this world forevermore. What about that ideal? I'm just saying. In that level, the two things that really get to people are distraction, vikshepa, and sense enjoyment, alpadika. And it's all around pleasure seeking, kamana. Again, since we're coming to the end of the half here in a few minutes, let's step it up. If you got to Rajas, mrisa, pretense or vanity, around what? False attainment, assumed status, feigned authority, and sense of superiority. You're pretty much describing the upper crust of our society now when you get there. They're very rajasic and they're very masterful in their rajas. You can see how it shifts from poor, unfortunate, lost souls to basic, conventional families. All of a sudden you've arrived to a kind of a crust of society where they're vaunting their false attainments as if they were great. See? And they want, you should be also, you know, seeking those things. But if you try and seek them, we'll make sure and put you down, you see. So it's very, well, pretentious. It's a world of pretense. Mrisa is the only word in Sanskrit I could find that was sort of like it. And there you're in a kind of deception. In other words, the things that are bothering people there are emotionalism and indifference. See, udasina and vedana moha. Moha is that word, again, that is around delusion. So the kind of deception going on there. Because if any of this is challenged, they immediately get emotional. And again, just look on the news and see how people are reacting to whatever's going on with whatever higher authority or power on there, and they're just going on and on forever about it in a state of emotion, peaked emotion, around things that are not real to begin with. That's the real kicker, see. They shouldn't even be, they're not worthy of your thinking. See. What happened to the only thing worthy of thinking about is Brahman, you see, or Almighty Father, What happened to that? See? And if I can't know that, then what's the next big thing? Well, how about the prophets or the messiahs or the avatars or the rishis and their teachings? Maybe I should consult that as a different kind of counsel. You see, that will tell me the nature of the world and the nature of reality in no uncertain terms, and then maybe I have a chance of realizing it. If you stepped up to Rajasattva, then you're talking about some light coming. It's more of a balanced, and it's around spiritual awakening. So it steps up like that in society, even today's world. You can measure it by that term. So you find people who are wanting to awaken. See, Shamakrishna used to like this, Chaitanya ho, and then he said, may your consciousness be awakened. Sometimes he'd even put his hand on your head and do that, and you would awaken on the spot if he did that. That was the kind of subtle power he had. So Chaitanya ho, may your consciousness be awakened. So at that level, it ushers in insight, glimmerings of insight. When you're meditating, sometimes the Upanishads say you can see like stars or like pinpoints of light. You see, it's like darkness is breaking away from that third eye. And you can actually see this inside of you. And pretty soon this perfectly cylinder white third eye, jnana chakshu, looking into a distant inward space. See, the opening of the third eye. And so glimmerings of insight will happen up to that. And you'll also have a deep intuition all of a sudden. It's sort of like a divine remembrance. Smriti. Smriti is very important. You're not trying to remember back to when you climbed out of the slime as a salamander or something, a tadpole to a frog or whatever, because that's just physical. You didn't even stand upright for more than a few thousand years, so how can that be you see? How can cycles of billion years go by and you've still existed through all of them when you haven't even walked upright for very many thousands of years? It's all inside. The whole thing comes from inside of you. And the deepest inside you can go is that indivisible self called Atman, which the very first words we said today in class when we chanted the slokas. So you're trying to awaken to something you've forgotten, so like that. It's never a case of sin being a black stain on your soul. The soul can't be stained by anything. Your mind can be stained, and your intellect can be distorted, and your ego can be inflated, but that's not the Atman. You're not the mind-body mechanism. So you take the water off the weeds in that case, you see, and start thinking about this divine flower of the heart, you see, and how to unfold it. Get beyond the three realms of rebirth, waking, dreaming, deep sleep, and get to this heart chakra, you see, which is named after the sound, anahata, the word. It's named after the word. Glimmerings of insight, intuition, aspiration, willingness to change, to back to your true self, and positivity in which to do it are all there. Basically, it has to do with the word we had in the sloka right here that we just passed. As a result of meritorious actions, the righteous sadhaka passes time in the delights of study and so forth. So it's all about sadhana, see, self-effort. You get a thirst for it. First you had a thirst for objects in life. You found out those didn't fulfill you. And you heard a teacher speak, and you started to practice a little, and you got a thirst for it. I had a letter from a student just 2 or 3 days ago, probably watching on the live streaming audience right now. It said, oh, I really look forward to my morning meditations now. I can hardly wait to get up and go meditate. You see, glimmerings of insight, intuition coming back, you see. That's what you like to hear about in souls. And so it's accompanied by deep thinking, alochana, I like that word very much, and upalabdhi, perception. Again, that's the word in the sloka, right? Because of his inner perceptions, he practices sadhana. So you're following the Upanishads to a T, and as you rise with me beyond the gunas in this chart. And we'll take a look at sattva after our break then. All right. I think probably Andrew had made some beautiful tea for us. So you may get it in the kitchen.